Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. My name is MiAh the King, and my son asked me to put his shoes on, but I don't think they'll fit me. Now then, today we're taking a look at a game just released on Steam called News Tower, developed by Sparrow Knight, published by Twin Sails Interactive, released in early access, and selling for $20. So, what is this game, you might be wondering? It's about what you'd expect. It's a simulation management game of owning and developing your own news station. Now, I've played a lot of games similar to this one, or at least, similar to the whole idea of building your own news, management business kinds of games, so I am a little bit curious whether or not this one is going to be, any good. So, yeah, let's just get into it and find out for ourselves. Basically, the limited story is as follows. Your father and uncle came to America as immigrants some time ago. They started off as paper boys and used their hard-earned cash over many years to build up their own news business, which you can then name yourself, and I like that. Then, after some time and some problems, your father has to leave, and your uncle decides to bring you in to manage it and rise it up from the brink of destruction. So now you're the one managing your father's old business. And that's about the gist of the story. Now then, as always, we'll go through the good and the bad, followed by my final thoughts, alright? And the first, as we always do, the positives. So, the first positive I got here is the sound, the music, all that stuff. It has no voice acting, so keep that in mind going forward. However, that music is just bumping. I mean, I could literally listen to that all day. It's perfectly old-timey and sounds great, and it fits the mood and theme of this game perfectly. It's the literal perfect background music for a game like this, and always keeps you interested. As for the sound effects, well, they work really well too. Again, everything sounds old-timey and accurate, and they're not too quiet or too loud. Just overall, the design here is phenomenal. I was having a blast listening to literally everything in this game. The next positive I wanted to talk about is the user interface. It's quirky, it's unique, it's interesting, and fairly easy to navigate. It wasn't too complicated that I kept getting lost or confused. It's blended together well, and overall, everything feels exactly as you'd want it to. Going along with this point is the controls. It's all as you'd expect them to be. WASD to move the camera around, click and drag here, and click here, and boom, you're done. So, the gameplay, controls, and mechanics, they work very well together. It even goes further than a lot of games, and as you play, you'll have little things pop up. Basically, working conditions for your employees, like it's too loud in here, or it stinks, or there's too much trash. But instead of having to navigate through the build menu yourself to find the things you need to fix these problems, they give you a nice little clickable pop-up. It shows you the problem and then immediately takes you to what you need to build so that way you can solve that problem. It's streamlining done well. Next up for the pros is going to be a twofer. It's the price and the tutorial. For a game like this, in early access with replayability and length, ingenuity, and creativity, this is a very appropriate price tag. It's rare for me to find a game that actually gives you an accurate price for its game, so when they do, I definitely want to share it. And here, the game is definitely worth $20, not more, not less. So that's a great thing to see. As for the tutorial, it's really good. It teaches you everything you need to know in a non-complicated fashion, it does so in a timely manner, and it works with the game's limited story to help pull you into the immersion as it helps you get acclimated with your new environment. And they have tooltips over everything that you hope they would, so it's easier to learn and understand what all these little buttons and icons mean and what they do. So that's also nice. The next thing I wanted to talk about positively is despite this game being in early access, I didn't notice a single bug or glitch. The game didn't drop frames, it didn't crash or clip or freak out on me at all. It felt like a fully finished game, and as a lot of you know, a game that plays smoothly and runs well is a lot more enjoyable than a giant game with next-gen graphics but keeps crashing every 5 minutes. So no worries here with that. The game plays phenomenally well and very smooth, which just overall made the experience a lot more fun. The last positive is a bit tricky because it's also going to be in the cons. That's the gameplay. Now overall, the gameplay isn't bad. It's actually kind of fun. We're talking a lot of new ways of looking at this kind of game. You've got a city you can expand your influence in, and as you do so, you gain these influence points, which you can spend to get new unique items to help your business grow or make it more efficient. Like a lot of management simulators, you can build and expand your business along with its employees. Your employees can level up in certain areas to make them better printers, typists, reporters, and so on. You can choose which stories you want to tackle, and then have them printed in whatever order you wish. Or can you? Well, we'll get into that later. But in general, the gameplay is pretty interesting and done fairly well enough that it's not a horrible experience. It does have its issues, and as I said, I'll go into those later. But for the most part, the gameplay is done really well. Along with doing your stories and printing your papers every Sunday, you also have to manage supplies for your employees like paper or food, as well as their comfort and their mood. You have to juggle quests throughout the city, like covering certain stories for certain interested parties, and so on. It takes the whole newspaper company idea and really goes in depth with its management and gameplay, a lot of which I don't want to spoil for you here because it's more fun to experience it for yourself, but it's still very interesting overall, the approach that they took to this style of game. Alright, well, that's all the positives I gotta say about this game. Next up, we're going to talk about the negatives, and you might be wondering why I didn't mention graphics. Well, they're just okay. They're not anything extravagant or super detailed or awesome, but they're not terrible or awful either. It just looks exactly as you would expect. No better, no worse, so I didn't really think it was worth mentioning. Before we go into the negatives though, could you hear me out for just 1 second? YouTube doesn't really advertise or share small channels like mine, which means the only way that my channel gets noticed and gets more views is if more viewers decide to help me out. Liking, commenting, and subscribing does help, but sharing my content and my channel on social media online helps a lot more. So if you find this video informative or entertaining at all, please consider supporting me. Thank you. Okay then, on to the negatives. The first negative I have is the illusion of choice. So technically, the game gives you choices to make throughout the game, but they aren't real choices, and I hate games that do that. In this game, your news company is basically controlled by quests and requests, meaning you don't get to print whatever you want. See, you have these random events that pop up. You can then send a reporter to create a story on these events. Sounds good so far, but if you want to win over a certain district, which you need to do to unlock the next district, which gets you influence and other stuff, then you need to report on specific stories. You don't get to choose, you have to take these ones. If you take a request from the Mafia, you have to do whatever they request. And this is over and over and over again. I've yet to play where I wasn't forced to pick certain stories. I only got to pick what I did in the very beginning during the first few stories of the tutorial, and honestly, there weren't much choices back then either. Rarely you'll have an opportunity to decide between this one or that one, but since your ultimate goal is to print what all these other people want, you're not really getting any choice of what you get to print, and it's a little frustrating. Your stories that you make also don't seem to have any effect on the world either, which is another thing that's kind of frustrating. It means that even though you're picking your own stories, or maybe you're choosing to do this or choosing to do that, it doesn't really matter. So you might as well just do what the game tells you to do. Next up is the gameplay. Told you that it'd be in both sections. This game throws way too much at you way too fast. Every in-game day, they are introducing something new. It's either new expenses, new items, new employees, or new game mechanics, new quests, and I could definitely keep going. By the time I ended my video, it felt like I was drowning, literally. And with the tutorial literally setting you up to fail, it made it even harder. What do I mean by that? Well, the tutorial took up so much of my money that I was forced to take out a loan, which I think also might have been part of the tutorial, but why oh why would the tutorial give you things that hurt you? Like, my building was overcrowded. I didn't have the space because of the tutorial. I didn't have the money because of the tutorial. I didn't have the income because of the tutorial. And then it sets you up with other little failures, like the Mafia wanting you to do a story on something, but then the story doesn't even pop up for you to report on it until the end of the week, and despite my reporters being in good moods with tons of accessories to improve their job performance, they still couldn't get it done in time. So the Mafia obviously paid my news business a little visit. So this kind of stuff is everywhere in the tutorial, all these kinds of things, left and right, hitting you, so much stuff. Like, the tutorial started off fine, and then it started to get more and more as it's introducing more and more stuff, which is just making the overall gameplay just feel crowded and frustrating, and you're drowning, and you don't know where to focus your attention, and you don't know why this isn't working, even though you're doing what the tutorial said, and it's because it was too much. It was overcrowded too fast. So the gameplay is a little bit too chaotic right now. Everything needs to just slow down a little bit. The timing on those stories also needs to be more realistic. Why the heck are these stories being released a day before I can even publish them? Like, okay, fine, I get that they're going to happen like in real life and you can't really get to them in time, but even so, it's like, it doesn't make any sense from a gaming standpoint. Like, why introduce this here and now when I obviously can't do it? Also, the game should start you out with more, with a couple thousand more dollars, so you don't find yourself overwhelmed and losing money in the first couple hours of gameplay. And that's pretty much the only thing I really need to say about that. That's also all I really need to say negatively about the game. And in case you're not keeping track, that means that I've got 5 positive points to 2 negative points. Okay, look, so here's my overall thoughts. I think that this is a great game. I think it's a great start. I mean, the game's not perfect, it has its issues, but it's early access, which means these things need to go through trial and error with the customers so that the developers can make adjustments to suit our needs. For what's there, I think, it's not bad. It's a good little game. It can get frustrating and overwhelming, but for the most part, everything here works better than you'd expect it to, and it really draws on the immersion and the old-timey business kind of thing, and everything just feels really well done. The game has an interesting idea, it plays well, its gameplay is in-depth and intuitive, its overall design is just very well implemented here, and I would like to see some changes made to the gameplay and, maybe give us more choice in what we print, but for the most part, it's not bad. Not at all. Would I recommend it? Well, I mean, if you're watching this, then it means you were interested in this game already, or at least interested in simulation management games, so yes. Yeah, I'd recommend you give this game a shot. Sure, it's a little rough around the edges, and I know I might have sounded a little irritated with my negative points, but that's just because I'm so passionate. But the majority of the game is frickin' solid. You'd be missing out if you didn't check out this game. Alright, everybody? Alright, so that's all the time I got for this video. Thanks so much for watching, with a special thanks to those who stuck around to the end. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you all again on my next adventure. So until then, I bid you all farewell.